Yo guys, what is going on? Blossom's back and welcome back to another episode of Top Drives. We're gonna get straight to the point. I love the American Overdrive Trials. I thought it was a very well planned and well designed event. Had a lot of fun and I think it covered a lot of good points about how I like these trials to continue for updates to come. Now, before we get into today's video, I just want to let you know, I know a lot of people think that, I have a bias for American Overdrive because obviously I'm an American collector. But American Overdrive aside, the update aside, I want to tell you why I believe that this was really well designed, and I just want to give Hutch their credit when it's due. You know what I mean? So let's get straight into it, okay? We have 20 chapters, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to go through every single chapter. I'm going to give you a brief recap of everything that we have experienced since the trials started for us. So the first one that we got was Empire City, right? I'm kind of still surprised to call it Empire City instead of like the Big Apple. I feel like that would be a bit more obvious. But this was the first debut of the new New York City tracks. And the requirements for Empire City were pretty, broad. It was RQ 10 to 49. RQ limit was 200 throughout the first level all the way to the final level. And within that car pool of RQ 10 to 49 American Overdrive cars, you could use 212 cars. Out of the 212 cars, 142 are standard tires, 35 are performance, 29 are all surface, off-road 6, and 0 slicks. So the majority of the cars that you can use, 142, goes to standard. So you'd want to think that they're going to be a decent amount of wet track sets, right? So let's look at what we encountered. So in the first chapter, each race, each chapter has 100 races, right? It's 5 races per level. There are 20 levels in a chapter. Out of 100 races, 52 of them were dry, 44 of them were wet, 1 was like 100% dirt, and 3 were mixed. So it's like dirt and asphalt mix. If it's dirt and sand mix, I'll still put it as dirt. The only ones that goes under mix are things like the lumber mill or like the ocean beach slalom. Like as long as there's a little bit of asphalt in there and you can't use off-road tires, right? There were no city streets involved, and it was a mixture of twisty and fast. Now, this was a great starting point. Most of the cars that you were racing against were really easy. You're going up against commons, uncommons, and because it was really broad, obviously the update was new. Not a lot of people would get very specific cars from specific niches just yet. So keeping it broad, super open for, the first ever chapter, just making it RQ 10 to 49 within the update, I thought was pretty nice. And the levels were pretty easy as well. So overall, chapter 1, I think the difficulty in my opinion was easy. Like I said, it has a broad selection of cars and can become a complete of a very fundamental American Overdrive collection. You don't even need to max things out for chapter 1. Now moving on to chapter 2 was way back when. This is where we got a little bit more stringent with our requirements. In 1910 to 1999, the RQ limit started at 130 and you can max out at a 230 RQ to use in the final race. Your car pool consisted of 125 cars, where the bulk of the cars, 95 of them, had standard tires. So you want the majority of the track sets to be wet. And it was, which is really nice to see, because the thing about APGP was I felt like the majority of the track sets were all dry. Although the update brought so many four-wheel drive performance tire cars, so many standard tire cars, I feel like those cars didn't get a lot of use. It was mostly dry and it was just favoring the performance tire cars all the time. So this being majority wet was pretty nice. It's self-aware, right? Like you bring an update where the majority of the cars are standard tires that perform better in the wet, you want a challenge that kind of favors towards more wet track sets. So it was pretty nice. There were 4 city streets in total, so there were 4 times where you saw the image. When I say city streets, I mean when you see the speed bump indicator, so when you need to use a medium ground clearance or sometimes a high ground clearance car for motocross, and it was a mixture of twisty and fast. So overall, I still thought that this was pretty easy. It focuses on cars from the update above the age of 24 years old, and yeah, better handling center tire cars are a positive here. So if you pulled a lot of the better handling center tire cars from American Overdrive early on, way back when, would be a pretty easy chapter for you. Now, moving on to the third one was the blues. This is the one where we covered the rare American Overdrive. RQ limit range from 180 to 190. Again, majority of the cars out of a pretty small car pool, 46 is one of the smallest out of all the chapters. 27 of them were standard tires. Looking at the tracks, most of them were dry. So this was a weird anomaly where most of the cars you could use were standard, but most of the track sets were dry. So for a lot of us, I think in this chapter, we will be using standard tires in the dry. And this is where if you were going up against a performance tire car in the chapter, you would probably need to fully upgrade your standard tire car to actually beat that performance tire car in the dry conditions, right? It included 12 city streets, mixture of twisty and fast. There was no off-road in this chapter, and there was almost one drag almost every round. So if you had something like an Astrovet or a Mako Shark, it would go a long way for this chapter, right? In my opinion, I thought this was pretty tough. And the main reason why I thought that this was pretty tough was because the pool of cars that you could use was really small. You could only use 46 cars, all within the rare rarity, and you had more of an advantage if you have performance tire rares, and they're more standard tire than performance tire rares. So it's pretty hard, I would say, really early on in this update to get 5 performance tire rares off the bat and fully upgrade every single one of them. As you can see, that's some of the rares that I use, and I own over here, as you can see, 2 Buick Grand Nationals. I actually had to upgrade 2 Buick Grand Nationals to get me through some of the chapters over here. So there weren't a lot of situations where I needed to use duplicates, but this was one of them where the Buick Grand National just came in key, especially for those city streets medium stuff. It was just a great car. It was also a great car for the drags as well because it had a low 0 to 60. Mako Shark, like I said, fantastic for this chapter. Now, moving on to chapter 4, Midtown, only medium ground clearance, which is cool because there are a lot of medium ground clearance cars in this update, and this only required medium ground clearance American overdrive cars. RQ limit went from 160 to 230. You could use 187 because more than half of the update are medium ground clearance. 141 standard tires, 43 performance, 1 slick, and 2 are all service tires, 0 off-road. Now, moving on to the track conditions, 36 wet, 52 dry, 8 mixed, and 4 straight up 100% dirt, or 100% snow, sand, etc., etc. Again, it included 5 city streets, lots of hybrid tracks, and I think there were two levels where it was just North Loop everything, right? Difficulty, again, I think it's like intermediate. It requires some fully upgraded cars, unlike the first couple of chapters, you could get by with just like 1-star cars. This one, you kind of need to upgrade some cars for the later levels already, right? You got upgraded cars, and specifically performance, a lot of dry, again. Cars that I ended up using a lot for Midtown included like the Dodge Dart, the Chevrolet Malibu Max SS, as well as the Buick Bengal. I didn't have the Chevrolet Impala SS 37 at the time of Midtown. This car came afterwards. Same with the Buick. I didn't really use that for the challenge as well. But those cars would be useful for that. Moving on to level 5, modern era, 2000 to 2024. RQ limit goes from 160 to 230. Carpool 156 cars, and this time the majority of the cars were actually performance tires. So that was a nice breath of fresh air. But the majority of the track sets were actually wet. 43 were wet track sets, 42 were dry, which is balanced. That's what I like to see, right? 7 dirt, 7 mixed, 4 city streets, and a lot of runway and canyon tracks, right? Overall, I thought it was, intermediate difficulty. I would say that chapter 3, 4, and 5 really emphasized on your rare collection. So if you have a pretty decent rare collection, you should be able to get 3, 4, 5 down pretty easily. And it's great. I love that these chapters all share something in common. It's better to have 3, 4, 5 all specialized in rare than like 3, 9, and 13. Because it kind of feels like, if all the challenges use the same kind of pool of cars, it feels like when you upgrade the rare, it brings you more value. You can use it immediately, which is a really feel-good kind of thing. And I thought it was just really well done in the trials. Now moving on from rares as well, uncommon. So level 6 green seam, RQ 20 to 29, 52 cars you could use. RQ limit from this chapter range from 130 to 145. There were 43 standard tire cars for you to use, 8 performance, and 1 all surface, which is that GMC. Now, track sets, 54 dry, 34 wet, 10 dirt, and 2 mixed. There were no city streets here, a lot of runway and canyon tracks. This one was majority dry, and I would say it's challenging. I don't really say it was challenging. Standard tire drag spec and twisty performance are useful, but rare to come by, right? Like, they're not a lot of performance tire. They're only 8. There are only 8 performance tire uncommons, and those are the ones that will get you the most value here out of those 8 cars. So in the end, I had a couple of duplicates. I had 2 Cadillac Eldorados, which helped me a lot. I had 2 of these these Chevrolet XP897 GTs, which also helped me a lot. Now, granted, you don't need to use performance tires to beat the levels here. If you fully upgrade some better handling standard tire cars, it should be able to get you through. If you have like a better handling standard tire like RQ27 Plus, or if you have a drag spec standard tire car for those drag levels, then you would be set as well. So it's not like you need to use 8 of the performance tire cars, but they would definitely bring you the most value here, and they're pretty hard to come by. So I think that this is a pretty challenging level. Now moving on to level 7, it was fast forward, front wheel drive, RQ 52 cars you could use, ranging from RQ 100 to 200. Majority again falls under standard. Looking at the track sets, majority of the track sets were again wet, which is really cool. 55 wet track sets, 37 dry track sets, 5 off-road, 3 mix, 4 ocean, city, street, and 1 motocross is what MX is. In my short form, MX is motocross. And there's a very low RQ start. Now the tricky thing about this was the low RQ start. I believe you started at like RQ 100, which is like an RQ 20 average for cars you could use. So you were using commons, and that made it hard because all of the challenges that you did before fast forward, you could get by with either uncommons or rare. So this is the first one that actually called for commons. So I remember being stuck here for a little bit. Also, there was a bit more emphasis on performance tire front wheel drives at the start of the challenge, and those were pretty hard to come by as well. So yeah, you might encounter a nice little roadblock here, but it's not that bad. Once you get, those low end range cars, you'll be able to get through. But I was stuck there for a little bit. Moving on to level 8, new roads. This is the first one specific to one brand, Chevrolet. RQ limit goes from 110 to 230. All the stats, as you can see, are below. Moving on, track sets 28 wet, 56 dry, 12 off-road, 4 mix, including 3 city streets medium, and there was a great mixture of fast, twisty, and New York City tracks. Overall, it's intermediate, it's a lot of dry tracks. It doesn't really require performance tire cars. As long as you, fully upgrade your standard tires, they should be able to get you through some of the levels here. Fully upgraded rare standards will do, like I said, like things like the rares that I used earlier on. So again, the cars that I use in level 3, 4, and 5, they kind of translate to level 8, where you can use those cars again. So there's great replayability with the rarity very early on in American Overdrive Trials. Moving on to level 9, or chapter 9, mixed models, hatch, estate, SUV, MPV, pickups, and vans. Again, all the stats are listed below. Majority of the cars, all surface tire this time, of 55 being represented. Track sets, 56, majority dry, surprisingly enough. 17 off-road, 12 mix, 15 wet. In total, it was like 29, which is like off-road or mixed. 3 included city streets medium, fast, twisty, and a lot of those canyon tracks. Overall, I think the difficulty was pretty intermediate. I think the most important thing is that all surface tire pickups aren't exclusively required. So although it feels like this was a level that was maybe made for those pickup trucks, in the end, in terms of execution, you could actually get by. You could actually, complete the challenge without even using those pickup trucks. So if it was Hutch's intention for players to use pickup trucks from the update for this challenge, they kind of missed the mark on that. Obviously, you could use the pickups. The issue is majority of the pickups are super rare. People wouldn't want to fully upgrade the super rares because you can just upgrade like a rare saloon, or not rare saloon, but like a rare MPV or something like that, estate or hatchback, and that will get by just the same, right? So it's cheaper and it's just easier to use. So that's just one thing to consider. Like if this was a chapter made for pickups, I don't think a lot of people actually use pickups for that. Level 10 was Coupe de Ville, or Coupe de Ville. RQ limit range from 80 to 300. So again, very low RQ to start, RQ 80. Carpool 92, majority goes to standard tires. Track sets, majority of the tracks were, dry, 65 dry, 31 wet, 3 off-road, 1 mix, 11 city street mediums, which was decent amount of city streets, which is nice. I feel like we don't see a lot of cars where a lot of track sets where you need to use a medium ground clearance car, like with the speed bump icon. Like out of like 100 races, only like 11% require a medium ground clearance car for this. But yeah, it's run of the mill fast and twisty track sets with some Tokyo tracks thrown in there as well. Most levels can be beaten with rare and below. I only had 2 supers, it was fine. So yeah, it's true, you know, for level 10, this was my entire collection from today. I took the screenshot today from my garage. And yeah, I only have 2 super rares within that niche. I only have the Buick Riviera and the Chevrolet Firenze, and I got by just fine. So it's not a very expensive chapter to get by. You don't need to use super rares. You can get by with rares. Just a couple of super rares, maybe 1 ultra rare here or there, and you will be fine for, you know, the halfway mark. Now, moving on, chapter 11, Off the Grid, American Overdrive. This one was fun. So majority of the cars were standard, but you could also use a host of off-road and all-surface tire cars, which is something that you needed because, as you can see over here, 99 of the track sets were dirt. There was only one, I think it was like a Canyon Tour Dry asphalt. That's the one non-dry asphalt one, but every other one was either, you know, a mix of either dirt or like a dirt and asphalt mix. One Canyon Tour asphalt. There you go. I wrote it down there. I didn't even see that. The rest are off-road and various surfaces, and there are only 2 gravel. And I think it's important to note that there's only 2 gravel because, in a sense, since there's only 2 gravel, I don't know how many Ocean Beach slaloms there was. I didn't count the Ocean Beach slalom, but in a sense, majority of the track sets you could just get by with off-road tires. So if this was a challenge that wanted the players to utilize all surface tire cars, I feel like they needed to put in more gravel or more Ocean Beach slalom for all surface tire cars to be useful. Obviously, you could use all surface tire cars in here if you didn't have any off-road tire cars, but it's just some food for thought. If people could use off-road tire cars, they will, because they get you more points in, you know, snow, and there's a lot of snow in this as well. So it's just some food for thought for next time. If Hutch really wants players to just use all surface tire cars in a trial, which I think is a good time to use all surface tire cars because they don't get a lot of use outside of challenges, then, you know, you got to limit your challenge. You got to limit your levels with gravel and Ocean Beach slalom and things like that. Moving on, difficulty, like I said, is intermediate. It's simple, but some players might find it mundane considering all the all-surface pickups they need to max, right? Or off-road tire pickups that they need to max. But it can be beaten without ultra rares, so it's not that hard. Moving on to chapter 12, Superpower, Super Rares times 5. Our killing was 240 all the way. Carpool 61, and those are all the cars you could use with the tires. Moving on to track sets, majority of the track sets were wet, 50 were wet, and the other half was either, you know, off-road or dry. Included 6 city streets, lots of rain, and dockyard tracks over here. Overall, the difficulty was pretty intermediate. I had to upgrade a lot of standard tire super rares for this. So if you do encounter this level, you might find yourself upgrading a lot of standard tire super rares. And the kind of the painful part is that a lot of the super rares from this update are either rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. None of them are actually four-wheel drive. So as you know, rear-wheel drive standard tires is probably one of the most useless niches in the game. So you'll be upgrading the car for this chapter and then probably not using it much after. I can say that for the Buick Royum, the Cadillac XTS front-wheel drive, the Buick Regal GS, the Cadillac CTS. Like, these cars, they don't get a lot of use outside this chapter, unfortunately. Malibu gets a little bit of use because I think we see more Chevrolet down the line as well. And also because that was one of the first within the niche that I unpacked. So yeah, that's just one thing to think about. Now we have Buick and Cadillac for chapter 13, lap of a luxury, 149 cars that you can use. It was pretty balanced again, 40 wet, 49 dry, 11 off-road, including 3 city street mediums or 3 speed bump icons. And a regular variety of tracks, some Monaco, some ocean tracks. Overall, intermediate. You know, once again, it's possible to clear all levels without using a single ultra rare, so it's not that hard. Just focus on low end for both brands. I think, for the most part, if you have a strong foundation of this update for rares and super rares, you could probably get by the trials really easily. And you get a lot of good prizes in this, right? You get carbon fibers and guaranteed epic and legendary packs, all for just upgrading a bunch of supers and rares. I mean, that's a pretty good trade deal if you ask me. Moving on to RQ14, Storm Chasing, rear-wheel drive times 5, and I think we see a lot of wet. So there you go, 92 wet tracks. Let's look at the tires again. 70 are standard and 55 are performance. Yeah, so 92 wet tracks, that's 6 off-road, and 2 of them are dry. At this point, I'm just combining the mix and the off-road. It's just easy to count. 4 medium cities and an irregularly large amount of drags. Yeah, there were a lot of drags. Like, on average, there were like 2 drags per level here. So if you have like just standard tire drags to your cars or just drags your cars in general, you're pretty set for this one. I would say it's pretty challenging though. Supers and ultra rares are starting to see more use around these chapters. You know, you gotta upgrade more supers, gotta upgrade more ultra rares, and it's time to dig deep. a lot of wet drags. A lot of wet drags in this one. Moving on to level 15, family style, 5 to 9 seaters. RQ limit was 180 to 330, and the carpool was 232 cars. Majority being standard tires of 125 being represented. Most of the track sets were wet, 42 wet track sets, 36 dry, 22 off-road, with 8 medium ground clearance track sets, with 2 of them being motocross. Overall, it's pretty challenging. Round 18 is where the chapter is particularly hard, requiring an ultra dragster. You need either like the max like 332 Chevy Slammer, or like a Chevy SS or something better than that. So that chapter was pretty tough. But overall, it requires a good variety of supers and below. Throw in some max ultras in there as well, you'll be fine. And obviously, you'll need ultras for this one anyway, because the requirements is ultra times 5. And the limit goes from 300 to 320, which is nice. It's not super stringent. Carpool 52. 5 standard only. Wow, look at that. 17 performance, 21 all surface, and 9 off-road, 0 slick. In terms of track sets, majority were wet, 48 were wet, 20 were off-road, and 32 were dry. Now, here's the interesting thing. Majority of the track sets are wet, right? 48. But there are only 5 standard tire ultra airs in American Overdrive. Also, there's 6 medium ground clearance, 2 are motocross. So I would say that this one's pretty hard, because not only are you limited to only ultra airs, you need to remember that every single chapter before this, you could get by with super airs and rares, right? You don't even need to spend the cash on ultras. But this one, you need ultras. On top of that, you need to upgrade the all-surface tire cars, or the 4-wheel drive performance tire cars. The odds of you getting the standard tire car in this update for an ultra rare is really low, because there are only 5 that you can unpack. So if you get one, consider yourself very lucky, right? Especially if it's the Buick LaCrosse that you see over here. Yeah, standard tire cars are not something that you need for this chapter. You can get by with just using all surface tires, but that's the thing, right? That's the thing that makes this hard, that makes it maybe annoying for some players. You are almost forced to upgrade all surface tire ultra airs to clear this challenge, if you are not lucky enough for the standards. If you're lucky enough like me, I got the Cadillac Era, so I got 2 of them. They're both 4-wheel drive. They help me exponentially. But if you don't have that, if you don't have the standards, you gotta go to the all-surface tire cars. But they'll get you through. Moving on, level 17, or chapter 17, Trailblazers. We bring back Chevy, and there's a rarity lock this time. So it starts where you can use Chevy's rare and above, and then it slowly progresses to Chevy's only super rare and above. RQ limits goes from 210 to 360. The carpool ranges from a maximum of 109 to a minimum of 65. So I don't have the exact numbers for you there. Track sets 47 dry, 41 off-road, so a lot of off-road here, and 12 in the wet. A lot of speed bump icons as well. 15 out of 100 of the track sets require you to use either a medium or high ground clearance car, because there is a speed bump in those track sets. And literally there's every kind of track set. This one's like a mess. Like there's like Laguna, there's speed bump, there's Dockyard, there's New York, there's regular hairpin indoor karting kind of stuff, like the vanilla tracks. Everything is there. I saw Deals Gap is there too. Difficulty is hard. This one's hard, I would say. It requires a pretty in-depth collection of American Overdrive Chevy Super and above. I have 28 max Chevy and above supers that are super rare above, you know, and that's a pretty big amount. That's a pretty big investment for this one. So this level, this chapter was pretty tough. Moving on to 18, Buick, Cadillac, Ram, and GMC. RQ limits range from 210 to 350, and the carpool range from 190 to 94 cars. Again, it was same like the Chevy, where you started with using rares and above, and then you can only use super rares and above. So the tires also vary depending on the requirements. There were 41 wet tracks at 17 dry, 42 off-road. Lots of snow here, so if you have off-road tire cars, it will go a long way. Mostly mountain tracks. This was hard too, I would say. It makes use of various ultra, all-surface, and off-road tire cars from the update. And as you can see over here, those were a lot of the cars that I used. I used a lot of the GMC Sierra RQ54. I also used the GMC Sierra 1500, the GMC Terrain Denali, and the Cadillac Escalade IQ. These were cars that I used a lot. The Yukon XL, the Escalade Sport, and the Escalade, they came later, so I didn't really use them that much for this level. But the Envision, yeah, I used a bit of the Envision as well. So it's really down to, but again, you know, from the last couple of chapters, from Redline to Trailblazers to High Life, you got 3 chapters in a row where at least your ultra investments will pay dividends, which is really, really nice. It feels like it's worth it. Now, moving on to level 19. This is personally my favorite chapter of the bunch because it's literally as it's called. It is the specialists, right? It's American Overdrive Super Airs and above, and the track sets were really fun. 50 were dry, 25 were wet, 25 were off-road. 13 had the speed bump logo, so it required a medium or high ground clearance car, and there was a lot of like 5 times of one niche. So under the specialists, there were levels where it was like 5 times quarter mile, 5 times hill climb, 5 times like speed bump 1 kilometer. Like, it was fun. It was really fun. It was just to see if you had, like a team depth of a certain type of specialist car in your garage. If you had 5 dragsters, 5 twisty cars, 5 off-road hill climb cars, it was fun. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, my favorite chapter, great recap of everything that you've used in the previous chapters so far, and yeah, it will help you overcome this level. So everything that you've upgraded up to level 19 will come back to help you. It feels like the Avengers assembling, you know what I mean? And last but not least, the cherry on top, level 20 no limit. I already streamed the entire thing on my YouTube channel. American Overdrive was the requirements. Every single car in the update, go like crazy, right? So I love this because it feels like, okay, Hutch is like, we're done. Like, you've made it to the end. We've already given you so many different requirements for you to race with. You've gone through all the hurdles. Here's the final stretch. You can use whatever you want, express yourself, be creative. In my boxing classes, the last round is always a freestyle that we like to give to our clients. And in the freestyle, we don't tell them what to do, right? You don't tell them if they want to cross or jab or hook or uppercut or body, anything like that. It's just you, it's the bag, you do whatever you want, And this is what it feels like. This feels like a freestyle round, and it's fantastic. I love it so much. This is great. Track sets were pretty balanced: 36 dry, 38 wet, 26 off-road, including 6 speed bump tracks, lots of New York, which is great. You're gonna wrap it all up, It's American Overdrive. You brought those New York track sets, let's use them. So it was really nice to see the usage of that, and it was just really fun. Difficulty, I would say it's challenging. I wouldn't even say it's hard, The fact that the RQ was so lenient that you could use whatever you want. I was just using legendaries and epics for the hell of it at this point, right? It was a cherry on top, All the RQ, all the requirements, go have fun. And it was great. And also, it's not that hard. You don't even need to use epics and legends. Like I say over here, you can actually beat the final round with only 5 61 RQ Chevy SSs. You would need 5 of the same car, but technically you can beat the final round with all Ultra Rares. So yeah, it was fun. It was just great. It was the cherry on top. So overall, in my opinion, the American Overdrive Trials was really well done. I would love to see the trials come back in a similar format like they did for American Overdrive. I think APGP was a shit show because like the track sets didn't really make sense. And also the prizes didn't make sense. Like, we didn't even know what the prizes were going to be. We didn't know when the next chapter was going to come out. At least for this one, we knew as clear as day what our prizes were going to be. There were like 4 epic packs for us to get. There was 1 legendary pack for us to get. There were like 5 or 6 carbon fibers for us to get. It was great. It's a great usage of American Overdrive cars. I felt like this challenge, made us use a great variety of the cars from this update. It was a liberal usage of in-game track sets. Like, it wasn't just, the hairpin everywhere. Like, we saw everything in this trials. We saw a little bit of Deal's Gap. We saw a little bit of Tokyo tracks. We saw a little bit of New York and Dockyard and the airplane hangars. Even the vanilla tracks, like just your regular slalom or your 1 mile. And obviously we saw a great variety of surfaces. We saw snow, sand, gravel, ice, dirt wet. It was well planned and it was great rewards. It was fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. I remember at the end of the APGP challenges, the trials or whatever you want to call it, I said that I don't want to see anything like that ever again. But they proved me wrong. They came back, they improved it. American Overdrive Trials, in my opinion, was a lot of fun. It was really well designed. It was really well thought out. And you gotta give where credit is due to Hutch, man. This was really good. This was really good. If I had to give some criticism, I would say utilize your medium ground clearance and high ground clearance cars more. I still felt that, medium ground clearance cars are kind of an afterthought here. Aside from that one chapter where you could only use medium ground clearance cars, I feel like there were just other places where you could have just utilized them a little bit more, like more speed bump 1 kilometers, more ocean beach or ocean city streets. Just utilize that niche a little bit more, you know, maybe recognize what are the niches in the game that don't get a lot of limelight, and maybe, you know, cast some attention on them. Like, maybe for the future, I don't know, people might not like this, but like if you had one chapter dedicated to rear-wheel drive standard, you know, it brings some usage to those cars. But anyway, this is really well done. I enjoyed it. It was really good. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great day, man. Let me know down in the comments below you agree or disagree. If you disagree and you think this is a bad challenge, I will tell you right now, I will disagree with you. I think this was really well done, and I think it was a great improvement from APGP's trials. But yeah, anyway guys, hope you guys have a great day. Stay safe, wash your hands, and good job, Hutch. Peace.
Bro, this song just makes me so happy.
Me too.
Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies. They so fine. Imagine being Asian in the 50s, looking nifty, leather jacket, looking sleek, look like Presley, look so deadly. Got a jukebox back at home, feeling jazzy, turn it on and play it slow, like the movies with the ladies. They so fine. Sit back, relax in my Bonneville Pontiac. Hold tight all night, cruise to Jacksonville.